All right, for more on this, I'm now being joined live by Colonel Rich Outzen from Washington, D.C., Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council and the Jamestown Foundation. Colonel, thanks so much for making time for us. And a little later, I'll also be joined by my colleague Susan, who will be joining us from New York. Colonel, let me quickly come to you. The ceasefire, Donald Trump has announced it. Pakistan had, as per the statements, initiated it and facilitated. And there was also some role of China that some reports are suggesting. But as of now, we're looking at a 2-week pause. Trump says that 10-point proposal from Iran is workable. But if you've gone over those 10 points, do you really feel Iran, or do you really feel the US is going to ensure that there is complete protection to Iranian-backed militias across the region? They're going to close their missions in the Gulf. There are a lot of mentions in those 10 points. How do you read into this entire situation?
Well, first of all, it's good to be with you. Thank you. I think that of the 10 points, I think there are indeed 10 points. And I think the 10 points that are actually being discussed between Trump and the Iranians are not the 10 points as advertised by the Iranian public announcement. Why? Because as I read those 10 points, there are 0 of those 10 points that the United States would actually agree to. So certainly the closure of all regional bases. Now, it could be that the actual agreement says the United States will cease operations against Iran in the Gulf, and that Iran has to communicate to its public that means the shutdown of all American bases. It could be that the U.S. will cease offensive operations during negotiations and consider lifting sanctions in exchange for concessions on the Iranian part, and that Iran says they're going to stop all fighting and compensate us for what happened. But I think, honestly, in negotiations, is the art of negotiations, there is something to be said for an agreement and a process that allows both sides to communicate success to their own people. Oftentimes, the actual text of what's being discussed is a little different than what either side is communicating. But let's be clear here. Iran is not negotiating from a position of strength. They've had most of their military capabilities severely degraded, not broken entirely, but they have lost most of the offensive power projection capabilities that they had. It will take them, years to recover from this, even if the United States were to walk away, which it's not going to do. It's not going to simply abandon its Gulf allies. So I think what we're seeing here is the interplay of 10 points that get both sides within reach of a better status quo than the ongoing fighting, but it's certainly not as what the Iranians have advertised.
Colonel, as far as the Israelis are concerned, the White House has said that they are very much in line with the ceasefire. They are going to halt the missiles, but there are reports that are suggesting that they are dealing with incoming projectiles from Iran, and this was 10 minutes after that post from the US president. One understands that usually any ceasefire, when it is announced, it takes some time for it to reflect on ground. Those are just military realities, which you will, of course, know better. But I wanted to understand, do you feel Israel is going to abide to this?
Well, that's a good question. I think that the Israelis are pretty careful not to cross Trump on this sort of thing, and they will not embarrass Trump. Trump, while he has been very energetically pro-Israel in his general regional and geopolitical approach, has also been very direct with Bibi Netanyahu about certain things. And when he tells Bibi, don't do something, I think that comes with the knowledge both that he's generally supportive of Israel and is going to do things that protect Israel's security, but that he's not afraid to push back very publicly on Netanyahu. And I think that if push came to shove, if Trump says stop and Israel does not stop, first of all, Israel's capabilities without the U.S. backbone in the region are far, far more limited in terms of the ability to achieve effects. But second of all, Trump's not a man who forgives slights like that. So yes, I think if Israel says we're going to abide by it, that largely they will. If you can go back and look at the first Gulf War in 90 and 91, even the second Gulf War in 2003, generally speaking, when the United States is very clear about the need for Israel to stand down in a particular regional fight, Israel takes that message to heart, because at the end of the day, they are largely dependent on the supply of munitions and broad level military support. They've got excellent military of their own, but they simply do not have the scope and size of logistical support and strategic reach to do what we do. So when we say stop, I am very confident that Israel will stop.
I take your point, Colonel Outzen, and stay with us. I'm also joined by my colleague Susan, who's joining us from New York. Susan, these developments are coming in extremely fast as reactions come in from different parts of the world. Just give us more of whatever you've picked up in the last 15-20 minutes since we spoke last.
So we are getting reports that Iran continues to launch those cluster munitions against Israeli civilians hours after President Trump announced that ceasefire, and then we got that statement by Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi that said that Iran is expecting to open the Strait of Hormuz. We're also now getting reports from Saudi Arabia coming in that they are cautioning their residents. The Saudi Civil Defense says that early warning is being issued in eastern region to alert of potential danger. We have to see what that's about. We're going to get you an update on that. But I thought it was interesting. And not surprisingly, this is geared towards a domestic audience, but Iran's Press TV now is quoting the Supreme National Council as basically saying that the United States accepted its 10-point plan and everything is done, and basically the ceasefire is long-lasting. So, you know, that, again, that's for their domestic audience. I don't expect the United States to reply to anything like that. But it just, I think, signals just how far off the two sides are going into this ceasefire negotiation, which is possibly, reportedly, going to happen in Pakistan on Friday.
Susan, stay with us. Let me quickly go over to Colonel Outzen. Colonel, as Susan mentioned, if you can weigh in on that, because there are reports that Israel is dealing with cluster munitions. There are also reports that UAE is responding to missile threats. And the Saudi Civil Defense says that early warnings have been issued in the eastern region to alert of potential danger. Are these just tactical realities before the ceasefire eventually comes into place on the ground? Or is there more to it? If you can explain to us.
Yeah, so one of the biggest battles of the first Gulf War happened after the announcement of a ceasefire, when the Iraqi forces were pulling out of Kuwait, and yet there were still frictions, shall we say, on the ground that led to a major exchange of fire. When you have people that are engaged in direct combat, even if it's by the shooting of missiles and drones, not only is there a lag time between when you hit the fire button and you send this and when it hits. So in some cases, these munitions take minutes, but in some cases, hours to reach. So, and this is fairly recent development. But there's always someone who doesn't get the word. I would say, as a military man, if 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours after this announcement from both Washington and Tehran that we have a 2-week process, if you still are seeing an exchange of fire then you have to doubt the sincerity of one side or the other. And frankly, the Iranians still have much more to lose if that's the case. Now, Trump used some very, very aggressive rhetoric about what was coming. And the opportunity provided by the Pakistani and other mediation gives them an opportunity to step back and pursue negotiations again. But I believe that Trump's ready to do a far more extensive set of strikes against Iranian infrastructure and energy if the ceasefire is not observed by the Iranian side. So in that sense, the Iranians have far more to lose. I suspect that in 3 hours or 4 hours, if we ask this same question, things will very much be indicating that we're in a negotiating pause.